Shalom and welcome to the video for chapter 22. The topic today is idiomatic endings plus possessive endings on plural nouns. I do need to apologize if you hear a bit of background noise. I'm recording this actually at an airport. I'm on a conference trip right now, and and I found the quietest possible corner I could in the airport to do this. So I apologize if there's any background noise. But let's jump right into chapter 22. We have two foci today. We're going to learn how to translate kol, hine, and ein when these particles have suffixes, pronominal suffixes attached, and they're going to be used in a number of different ways. But we'll get into that in a moment. And then secondly, we're going to learn how to recognize pronominal suffixes attached to plural nouns. So as you can see, the whole chapter focuses on suffixes, which you in fact know quite well. And so this little warning that I have down here at the bottom, it's really maybe not so much of a warning as just a helpful tip. The pronominal endings you learned in the earlier chapters are really similar to the ones you're going to encounter in this chapter. And so you might want to consider looking back at those pronouns, back at those chapters, especially if you're the kind of person who has difficulties recognizing these pronouns. It will really help you if you have them down. Learning this material will be much easier this week if you have those pronouns memorized and that you're very familiar with them. Okay, let's jump right in. So here are the three particles that we're going to learn about: kol, hine, and ein. And here you can see what they look like with all the pronouns attached. I'm not going to go through and read each one, but here, you can see just examples. For instance, kuli. So this is kol plus the hirak yod, and the hirak yod is of course for singular. And you see it's a little bit different where hineni. You still have the hirak yod, but you have some vowel changes, and even in the addition of a consonant. And so, the hine is going to be the most difficult one to recognize, probably. No, I take that back. The ein is also a little bit challenging, and part of the reason these two are challenging is, as you might have guessed already, they end with the noon, and the noon often can cause some problems and challenges. So these are the three words, and you will, again, I don't think you'll need to memorize any of these, but you would do well just to review some of these endings and make sure that you're able to recognize the pronouns in the readings. And so if you can recognize the pronouns in the readings, then you're in good shape. But if you're having a hard time, if you're kind of struggling while you read through the sentences, you're having a hard time recognizing the endings, then you probably need to do a little bit of review. So let's begin with ein, actually. How is ein used? Well, to begin with, ein is used to negate participles. That's one function it has. So look at this example sentence I have. Ein ha'ish ro'eh. Ein ha'ish ro'eh. The man, we could do it very woodenly, not the man is seeing. It's kind of how it literally, or woodenly reads, I should say. But what's happening is that the ein is negating the positive action of ro'eh, which has to do with sight, right? This is a participle for seeing. So the translation would be the man is not seeing. Even though on a kind of a wooden level, we would say not the man is seeing. So that's this is one function of ein. It is used to negate participles. Here's another example of how it's used. It's also used to negate noun sentences. So it's easiest to see this when you compare these two right here. Anachnu amcha, and this is we are your people. You could imagine ancient Israel saying this to God. Anachnu amcha, we are your people. And then how would one negate that? Einenu amcha. Einenu amcha, we are not your people. So there, what you see happening is the pronoun here, which is independent, is actually attached to the ein, einenu. So you have not are we your people is one kind of a wooden way of doing it, but in the end of the day, it's we are not your people. That's how we would translate it in idiomatic English. Then here's the third use. With pronominal endings, the ein is used redundantly with a noun. So let me tell you, that might seem a little bit confusing, but this is what I mean. Here's the sentence. Yaakov einenu bincha. Yaakov einenu bincha. So what's happening here? You have Yaakov, which is obviously the name of Jacob, and then here we have the ein, right? The negative particle we're looking at, and then we have nu, which is the third masculine singular, pronoun. I know that this is where it gets a little bit confusing because we would expect this to be o, but for ein, let's go back here. For ein, the third masculine singular is einenu, and you'll notice, unfortunately, this is the same form as we, einenu, and so you're going to have to use context to actually determine which of the two pronouns it is. But in this case, Yaakov is he is not your son would be kind of the wooden way of doing it, or we could say Yaakov not is he your son, or the son of you. That would be kind of the wooden way to do it. But in short, Yaakov is not your son. Okay, let's look at hine. This is often in dictionaries. When you find this word, the definition will say something like "behold" or "here is," something like this. These are the definitions given in your book. Now, just like ein, hine is also used in a couple different ways. Let's look first at how it's used with participles. So hineni omed lefanecha. Hineni omed lefanecha. So this would be here I am. So we have the hine plus the hirakiod, which is I. Here I am standing lefanecha, before you. So lifnei plus the cha, the second masculine singular. Here I am standing before you. Here's another one. Hinam ketuvim batorah. So behold or look or behold, they are written in the Torah. So the here, the masculine, the mem ending here is masculine plural. So they are, look or behold, they are written, ketuvim. Ketuvim, of course, is the passive participle. Notice that it's the vav is here between the tav, the second and third radicals. That is the tav and the beit, and then batorah, which is of course the preposition plus the definite article, and then the word Torah, which is of course the word Torah or law or instruction. So, behold, they are written in the Torah. And then lastly, vayomer hineni. Vayomer hineni. This word hineni is well known from Isaiah 6. When Yahweh says, "Who will go for us?" and Isaiah says, "Hineni, I will," or "Here I am," or "Look over here," something like that. So this last one is vayomer hineni, and he said, "Here I am." So it's a way. The hine is a way of kind of drawing attention to a particular subject or to a particular thing, and it's often used with participles. Okay. We're going to now look at kol. Kol can be used with endings as the subject of the sentence, the object of the verb or preposition, or as a word of emphasis. So it has quite a few uses. Let's look. We'll begin with kol as the subject of a sentence, and then we'll look at the object, and then we'll look at a word of emphasis. So kulanu. Here I'm looking at the first sentence. Kulanu b'nei ish echad. Kulanu b'nei ish echad. Here's our kol, right? And it has the first common plural pronominal suffix, so all of us is how we would do this woodenly. All of us are b'nei ish, children of one man. So echad is functioning here to show the single man, the one man. All of us are children of one man. So here we see that kulanu is actually the subject of this verbless sentence, right? There's no actual verb here, it's a verbless sentence, but all of us are children of one man. Okay, let's look here at the second sentence. Natati et kulam la melech. Natati et kulam la melech. So here we have, it's not going to be the subject. Kol is not going to be the subject of the verb because the subject here is I. I gave, right? Natati is from Natan. I gave what? Well, here's the direct object indicator. Kulam, all of them. We don't know what the them is. It's just, I gave all of them, la melech, to the king. I gave all of them to the king. So here we have kulam, really kol plus the third masculine plural preposition, or pronoun, functioning as the object of the verb natati. I gave all of them to the king. Okay, third sentence, and this is going to be an example of how kol can be used to show emphasis. Ra'inu et hayam kulo. Ra'inu et hayam kulo. We saw, so this is from ra'ah, right? The hay is dropped off, and you're left with the yod and the nu, first common plural. We saw, what did we see? Et hayam, we saw the sea. Okay, so that's a self-standing, but then the kol can be used to emphasize that or literally all of it. All of it. And it, of course, referring back to the yam. So here you see I've done kind of a wooden translation and then a more idiomatic one. We saw the sea, all of it, or we saw the entire sea is how we could do that in English. Okay, well, let me pause here for a second and say, I'm going to present all of this pronominal information, and then we'll do some more practice sentences at the end, that will include all of this stuff we're learning. So we're going to learn now about possessive endings for plural nouns, and that is and in this we'll begin with nouns that end with im, typically the masculine nouns. And 4 things occur when you have a possessive ending that is attached to a plural noun. First of all, the im is dropped, so you're going to lose that. But don't worry, there are going to be signs that indicate to you that it is plural. So the first is the im is dropped. Second, the endings, which are almost identical to the pronouns used on singular nouns, are attached to the noun. Thirdly, the letter yod, pay close attention to this, stands between the noun and the ending, except in the case of first common singular. This is typically the key to recognizing when a possessive pronoun is attached to a plural noun. So that's why I say pay close attention to the yod, because the yod really is going to be your important marker for recognizing the plural. And then fourthly, there are going to be some vowel changes, and that's just going to be a little bit challenging. But I think the most important thing to remember here is that the yod is going to be a pretty strong indicator that you're working with a plural noun with pronominal suffixes attached. So let's look at some examples here. On the right, we have a singular noun, bain, which is a word for a son, and then we have all the pronouns attached: beni, bincha, benech, beno, etc. And these are all singular, so we have my son, his son, her son, etc. How then do we say, for instance, my sons or your sons? And that's what the chart on the left is. Notice the beginning form, or the absolute form here, is banim. If you want to put a first common singular suffix, banai. Now you need to notice something. It would be very easy to confuse bni with banai. The key to recognizing whether the pronoun is, or whether the noun is plural or singular, is to look at the vowel underneath the noon. If it's patach yod, then it is sons. If it's hirik yod, it is son singular. Now, that's a little bit tricky, but the other ones are going to be quite a bit easier. Notice, for instance, when you compare banecha, your sons, with bincha. Well, the pronoun is the same, right? You have the cha at the end. The difference is the yod, right? The difference is the yod. And you might think about it this way. This is the yod that is left over once the ending has been removed from banim. once the mem has been removed. So maybe that can help you remember that these are plural. So this yod is key, and notice it's found in all of the forms except for the first common singular. For the first common singular, you really need to look at the vowel to make sure you're interpreting it correctly. Now, what about possessive endings for plural nouns with ot endings, typically feminine endings? Again, 4 things are going to occur. The possessive pronouns are attached directly to the ot. So in this case, you actually don't lose the ending. The ot remains. Secondly, the possessive pronouns are almost identical to those used for singular nouns. That's the same as the last set. And then the letter yod, again, is going to be our helper. It stands between the noun and the ending, again, except in the case of first singular. And this is typically the key to recognizing when you're looking at a plural noun. And then finally, some vowel changes are going to occur. So here we have an example of bat. So this is from the word for daughter, and we see bt, bitcha, etc. going down the list. And then if you look on the left, you have banot, which is the plural form for daughters. Benotai. Again, the first common singular is anomalous in that it's somewhat, the ending is quite similar. You have a patach yod as opposed to a hirak yod, but the plural in this case is quite different. It's easy to tell that you're looking at a plural noun because you have the ot remaining. We don't have to. We can look at the ot, and we can also look at the yod in these other examples as a way of helping us see. I'm looking here with the plural. So, and then here are all the forms. I'm not going to go through and read all of those. Let's do some practice then. Here's our first, and these practice sentences are going to include information from all of the slides that we just learned. So from the ein and the kol and the hine, and also from the plural pronouns. So here's the first word. HaMelech einenu sofer et kaspo lifnei avadav. Okay, so HaMelech einenu sofer et kaspo lifnei avadav. Okay, what do you make of that sentence? Well, let's look at what probably is familiar. HaMelech is something that we know quite well. This is our king, or the king. And then we have ein. So this is the first new element that we've been looking at. It's ein plus, well, it's plus either the first common plural, we, or the third masculine singular. Remember, those forms are actually identical to one another. So we have to be a little bit careful. But the fact that the subject, or that the noun immediately preceding it is actually a singular masculine noun suggests that einenu is actually not him, or is the ein plus the third masculine singular. But let's go through the rest of the sentence to figure if that's right. Sofer, this is the masculine singular participle form of safar, which is the word to write or to count. And then et, of course, the direct object indicator. Kaspo, do you recognize this? Kaf, samech, pei. This is the word for silver, or kesef, or money. And then it has the third masculine singular. Where did my cursor go? It has the third masculine singular possessive pronoun, so his money, his silver. Lifnei avadav. And this is the word before, right? And avadav, what do you think about that? Does anything there look familiar? Well, this is the word for eved, right? But it's eved, but it plus the third masculine singular possessive pronoun. So we have his servants. And the reason we know this is plural is because of the yod right there. That's what gives it away, and so we know it's his servants. So how would we translate that? The king, this is kind of wooden, right? The king, he is not counting his silver before his servants. So he's not flaunting his wealth, saying, oh, look at all of my money. So the king, he is not sofer, counting his silver in front of his servants. So the key points there are the einenu and also the avadav. Those are the two things that sentence is trying to make sure you understand. Second sentence, biyadai uveyadecha nuchal lishbor et divrehem kulam. One more time. Biyadai uveyadecha nuchal lishbor et divrehem kulam. All right, let's see what we have there. What do you recognize? Well, we have beit here, biyadai. This is in my hands. Now, how did I know this is not my hand singular? How did I know that this is plural? Well, it has everything to do with the patach yod, and if this were singular, it would be biyadi, in my hand or with my hand. The second one is also plural. Here, and the way you tell is again the yod, right there. The yod indicates to us that this comes from the plural form of yad. So we could translate this first little phrase as with my, or by means of. Well, let me just stay with my hands and with your hands. That's our opening phrase. What's next? Nuchal. Do you recognize that at all? Well, the noon might give you a little bit of a clue. The noon is the first common plural imperfect prefix, so we are going to be doing something, right? Probably the two people to whom these hands belong, right? My hands, your hands. We are going to be doing something, and nuchal comes from the word that we just looked at last week, yachal, which means to be able. Okay, lishbor, shavar, is a relatively new root, and it refers to breaking something. And then we have et, divrehem. Again, we know this is the word davar, right? Words or matters or things. But how do we know that it's plural? The key is to look again at the yod, and it has a third masculine plural pronominal suffix. But the key here is to look at the yod in between the davar and the hem, and that tells us that we're looking at their words. And then kulam. Remember, when kulam comes after a noun like this one, it's typically used to emphasize something. So let's put all of this together. With my hands and with your hands, we will be able to break all of their things. Sounds like an ominous little situation there. Who knows what's going on? But you might think it's strange that we translated the beit with a with, but this is called an instrumental usage of the beit. So it means, really, if you wanted to do it woodenly, it would be by means of my hands, or by means of your hands, we will be able to break their things, and all of them is kind of how you do it woodenly. We will to break their things, all of them. Or in idiomatic English, we could say, we will be able to break all of their things. Okay, let's go to the next sentence. Im nishbor et kol divrehem he'avon yiyeh beyadenu. Okay, so im nishbor et kol divrehem he'avon yiyeh beyadenu. Okay, so we begin with the word im, which you may remember is the word for if. Nishbor is, again, from shavar, which is a word that we noticed up here. It means to break. And the noon there in the front tells us that we're looking at a first common plural imperfect form of the verb. And then here we have the same word as we had up here, divrehem. And this is from davar. And then we have the hem is the third masculine plural possessive suffix, and the yod here tells us that it is plural as opposed to singular davar. And then he'avon, this is the word for the sin. This means the sin. And then yiyeh, this is the third masculine. This is from hayah, third masculine singular, pa'al imperfect from hayah. So it means it will be, probably referring to he'avon, the sin will be. And then we have beyadenu. Here, this is similar to what we had above, right? We have the beit here and the beit here. But in this case, it's actually in our hands. In our hands. And again, this is plural because we have the yod between the dalet and the noon. Notice, again, how important that yod is for helping us identify these nouns as, or differentiating the plural nouns from the singular nouns. It's very, very important. And again, you just make sure that you're looking for those things. So how would you put all of this together? if we will break all their things, the ha'avon yiyeh beyadenu, the sin will be on our hands. Okay, long sentence, but we begin with the if we will break all of their things, the sin, it will be on our hands. All right, let's look at this next sentence. Avdecha hatov lo yispor et onotecha. That's a long. That's a long. Avonotecha lefanecha. So it's a long sentence. Let's begin here with avdecha. This, do you recognize this word? This is the word for from Eved, so servant. But in this case, let me just ask you: do you recognize? Is this word? It has a pronoun on it, cha, but is it a singular or plural? Remember, use the test. Use the 4 things that need to happen to it. Well, what might be helpful is to compare avdecha here with avadav here in the first sentence. And we know that this means his servants, and the key indicator is the yod, which is entirely missing from avdecha. So the missing yod there indicates that this means your servant singular, and in fact the hatov, it's your good servant, right? Because that tov is the adjective with the definite article, and the avdecha is definite because of the pronoun. So we have your good servant lo yispor. What is he not going to do? Yispor. He will not count or number et avonotecha. That's another long word, avonotecha. Do you remember what avon is? This is the plural of it. We have the ot. This is the word for sin. So, again, let's go through the test. Is this singular or plural? The yod, again, is our friend, and it's telling us that avonotecha is plural. And it has a second masculine singular pronominal suffix on it. Your sins. Lefanecha, this is lifnei plus cha, second masculine singular pronominal suffix. Let's put all that together. Your good servant will not count your sins before you. Your good servant will not count your sins before you. Excuse me. Okay, let's do just a few practice sentences, a few more. Hamishpat haya tov be'enei avotav. Okay, what do you recognize that's familiar in this sentence? Well, we could begin with the hamishpat. That is, you may remember the word for judgment, and it has the definite article on it. Haya is the third masculine singular form of the verb, haya, and referring to being. And tov is the adjective for good. Be'enei, do you recognize be'enei? Well, you may want to remove that preposition from the front, and you have eyes of. So this is the word pair form of the word for eyes, be'enei avotav. Now the real key, or the real word of interest here, is the avotav. Do you recognize what avot is? This is the word for fathers, or I should say, the word for fathers, the plural form. Avot is kind of an, as you remember, an irregular noun in that it gets the ending that we typically associate with feminine nouns, the ot, but it is actually a masculine noun. But you can tell that this pronoun is attached to a plural noun for 2 reasons. One is that the ot remains, but then you also have the yod, right, there to signal to us that the pronoun is attached to a plural noun. So his fathers, or his ancestors, we could say. Here's one translation for it. The judgment was good in the eyes of his fathers. So again, the most important thing is that you can recognize that avotav is a plural noun with a third masculine singular suffix attached, and you can tell it's plural because of the ot and because of the yod. Let's look at the next sentence. Hinam kamim al raglehem lifnei Aron habrit. Hinam kamim al raglehem lifnei Aron habrit. What do you recognize that's familiar here? Well, the preposition probably looks a little bit familiar. Al, regel. This is the plural form of the word regel, which is the word for feet, and then it has the third masculine plural suffix attached to it. Then lifnei, of course, means before or in front of. Aron is a newer noun that means refers to the ark, actually, and in this case it's Aron Brit, so we have the Ark of the Covenant, the Indiana Jones of Indiana Jones fame. So let's see what we can do with this. This is hine plus the masculine plural pronoun, and this is the participle kamim, referring to the action of rising. So we have look, that's the hine, they are getting up on their feet before the Ark of the Covenant. So the hine is what's reflecting the look and they, and this is functioning as the subject of the participle kamim. So here we have hine and the pronoun functioning as the subject of the participle. Okay, let's look at just one last sentence. Hatzava halach al raglav miboker ad erev. What do you recognize that's familiar here? Well, halach is, of course, a word that we recognize. Third masculine singular, pa'al perfect, and it has to do with walking, right, or going. Here we have regel again, but this time, notice it has a yod here between the lamed and the pronoun, so this must be a plural verb with a pronoun. And then we have min boker ad erev. Boker is morning, and min is from. So from morning until erev, evening. So let's put all of that together. Hatzava halach al raglav mi boker ad erev. The army walked on its feet from morning until evening. So they had a long march. And of course, the key thing that we're trying to emphasize here is the raglav. This is from the word for feet, and the yod next to the lamed tells us that it is plural. Right, this is a plural noun, and then the vav is what tells us that this is a pronoun, a third masculine singular pronoun referring back to tzava, the army. Okay, that's a lot of material, but let's look at some study tips. Let me conclude with some study tips. First thing, pay close attention to the 4 changes that occur when possessive pronouns are attached to the plural nouns, masculine and feminine, especially that yod that we were looking at in all of those examples. Pay close attention to that yod, and if you see it, you're probably safe to assume, if you see the yod and you also see the pronoun, you're pretty safe to assume that you are looking at a plural noun with a pronominal suffix. Finally, apart from the vocab, this week really isn't about memorizing new material. It's about recognizing how the endings you already know are being applied in a slightly different way, and in this case, recognizing how they're being used and attached to plural nouns. Thank you for watching this video, and I will look forward to talking with you this week.